These are the 8 richest Canadians who live like they're flat broke, and their spending habits would drive you absolutely crazy. We're talking about a 97-year-old billionaire who still checks payphones for loose quarters, a tech genius who cuts his own hair and bikes to work, and a real estate tycoon who camps overnight in Walmart parking lots. Buckle up, because you're in for a wild ride. Number 8. Jim Pattison. Let's kick this off with a man who, at 97 years old, will still stop and check a public payphone for a forgotten quarter. You heard it right. This is one of the richest men in all of Canada, a billionaire many times over, and if he walks past a payphone, he's checking the coin slot. That single image tells you almost everything you need to know about Jim Pattison. To understand the quarter thing, you have to understand where he came from. Pattison was a child of the Great Depression. His family lost their farm and crammed into a rented attic room in East Vancouver. From the age of 7, this kid was already hustling to help feed the family, selling garden seeds door to door, peddling donuts in his high school parking lot, delivering newspapers, even playing trumpet at church camps for money. When you grow up squeezing value out of every nickel just to survive, that instinct never ever leaves you, no matter how many zeros land in your bank account. His big break came in 1961, and it was a terrifying gamble. He put up his own home and his life insurance as collateral to borrow $40,000 and buy a single struggling car dealership. One outlet. That dealership became the launchpad for the Jim Pattison Group, a sprawling private empire spanning packaging, food distribution, forestry, billboards, and even global entertainment names you absolutely know, like Ripley's Believe It or Not and Guinness World Records. The man's fortune is estimated anywhere from $5.8 billion to over $11 billion. Now, does he own nice things? Technically, yes. There are corporate jets and a $25 million yacht. But here's the Pattison logic. He insists those are strictly business tools for entertaining clients, not toys for lounging around. His actual daily driver is a humble Dodge Ram truck. He drives himself to work every single day, weekends included, at 97. Read that again, the man is nearly 100 years old and still clocks in 7 days a week. And here's a detail that perfectly captures the no-frills culture he built. His longtime assistant has been with him for over 40 years and still personally answers the main corporate phone line herself. Even his Palm Springs estate, once owned by Frank Sinatra, he keeps decorated exactly the way Sinatra left it, out of respect for the history rather than any urge to splash out on a redesign. So while Pattison hunts for spare quarters, our next billionaire takes cheapness to a whole different frontier, because this man refuses to even pay for a haircut. Number 7. David Cheriton. Picture a man worth somewhere between $9 and $20 billion standing in his bathroom, cutting his own hair. Not at a fancy salon, not even at a barber shop. In his bathroom, with his own 2 hands, to save a few bucks. That's David Cheriton, and once you hear his story, the haircut starts to make perfect, ruthless sense. Cheriton is a Vancouver-born computer scientist raised by 2 engineers who themselves grew up during the economic collapse of the 1930s. That Depression-era mindset of self-reliance got hardwired into him young. Funny enough, he originally got rejected from a university music program, which pushed him into mathematics and computer science instead, and eventually landed him at Stanford right in the heart of the Silicon Valley boom. Now here's where his story goes nuclear, and it all happened on his front porch. Back in 1998, 2 Stanford students were pitching their little search engine idea, and Cheriton, recognizing how brilliant the thing was, wrote them a $100,000 check to help get it off the ground. The students were named Larry Page and Sergey Brin. The little startup was called Google. Yeah, that $100,000 porch check turned into one of the greatest angel investments in human history, and combined with co-founding Arista Networks and early bets on companies like VMware, it built him a multi-billion-dollar fortune. One smart conversation on a porch, and the man was set for 10 lifetimes. And what did all that money change about him? Absolutely nothing. He still rides his bicycle to the Stanford campus. He still lives in the same modest Palo Alto home he bought over 3 decades ago. He drove an old Volkswagen Eurovan for years, and he flat out describes himself as having, in his words, the brain of a scrounger when it comes to spending money. But this isn't sad penny pinching, it's a philosophy. To a systems engineer like Cheriton, blowing capital on a depreciating luxury car or a flashy mansion isn't a flex, It's a logic error. It's just bad math. Why let money rot in a driveway when it could be compounding instead? Cheriton bikes to work to keep his feet on the ground. Our next billionaire stays grounded in a far stranger way, by literally sleeping in parking lots. Speaking of refusing to overpay for the flashy version when the smart one costs a fraction, that's exactly what pulled someone on our team to the Pulse R8 Smart Ring. It reads your heart rate, your sleep, and your workouts right from your finger. A week on a charge, 100 days with the case, and it's fully waterproof. The surprise was the price, under $40, a fraction of the big-name rings because it comes direct instead of through the retailers that mark everything up. If you're watching on your TV, pause and scan the QR code on screen with your phone camera, or tap the first link in the description. Because our next billionaire stays grounded in the strangest way possible, by sleeping in Walmart parking lots. Number 6. Mitchell Goldhar. Here's a question for you. If you were worth a couple $1 billion, where would you spend your vacation? A yacht in the Mediterranean? A villa in the south of France? Mitchell Goldhar's answer is, and I promise I'm not making this up, a Walmart parking lot, in an RV, overnight. On purpose. Let me back up, because the why is genius. Goldhar is a real estate titan who built his entire fortune on serving the average value-conscious Canadian shopper. He looked at the commercial real estate world and realized landlords were charging such insane rents that stores had to jack up their prices to survive. So he set out to build affordable, open-concept shopping centers instead. Then he pulled off the move of a lifetime, convincing Walmart to enter the Canadian market with him as their exclusive development partner. He quietly locked up prime land all across the country, building over 265 shopping centers and 176 Walmart stores, which became the foundation of smart centers. His net worth sits somewhere between $1.5 and nearly $3 billion. And here's the thing, he never lost touch with the actual people shopping in those stores. So his favorite ritual is to load up a standard RV, hit the road across Canada, and camp overnight in the Walmart parking lots he helped build. Then he wanders the aisles incognito, chatting with regular shoppers, watching how they actually spend, staying plugged into what he calls the average Canadian's reality. While other billionaires hide behind gates and assistants, this guy is parked next to your minivan, taking notes. His frugality is so intense that critics in his business dealings, and even in his ownership of a soccer club, the famous Maccabi Tel Aviv, have literally accused him of extreme penny pinching. But here's the beautiful twist that shows it's not really about being cheap. Goldhar once spent $1.2 million to buy Paul Henderson's iconic 1972 Team Canada hockey jersey, one of the most sacred objects in Canadian sports. And instead of locking it away in some private vault to brag about, he sent it on a massive free public tour across the country so everyday fans could see it up close. The man pinches pennies on himself and spends millions on the public. And rather than retreat into insulated luxury, he still works as an adjunct professor at the University of Toronto, choosing to teach the next generation instead of just lounging on his billions. So Goldhar measures his wealth in land and loyal shoppers, but our next billionaire measures his in something you can't see, can't touch, and can't even hold in your hand. Number 5. Changpeng Zhao. What if I told you one of the richest men on this entire list owns no mansion, no yacht, no supercar, and for years owned no real estate at all? Not because he couldn't afford 1,000 of each, but because he genuinely doesn't want them. Meet Changpeng Zhao, the man the crypto world simply calls CZ, whose fortune has been estimated anywhere from $33 billion to a staggering $91 billion. His origin is pure grind. Born in China, his family emigrated to Vancouver when he was a teenager, and young CZ helped support the household by flipping burgers at McDonald's and pulling overnight shifts at a gas station. He studied computer science at McGill, got good enough to build trading software for the Tokyo Stock Exchange, and then in 2013 he made the bet that changed his life. He sold his apartment in Shanghai and went, in his words, all in on Bitcoin. Imagine selling your home, your single biggest asset, to pile everything into a digital currency most people thought was a scam. That's the level of conviction we're talking about. 4 years later, he founded Binance, and in under 8 months, it exploded into the largest cryptocurrency exchange on the planet. Now I should be straight with you, the road got rocky. In 2023, Zhao reached a plea agreement with U.S. authorities over anti-money laundering failures at Binance, which cost him the CEO job, a $50 million personal fine, a massive corporate fine, and a 4-month prison sentence before he received a presidential pardon in late 2025. A wild chapter, no doubt. But through all of it, his personal lifestyle never changed an inch because it was never built on stuff in the first place. CZ is almost always photographed in the exact same outfit, a cheap, simple, branded Binance hoodie. That's his uniform. He's lived like a nomad, valuing the freedom to move over the burden of owning property. His whole worldview, which he laid out in his memoir, is that real wealth is liquid digital assets and control, not a garage full of things that lose value and tie you down. To CZ, a super yacht isn't a dream, it's an anchor. At least with CZ, you can spot him in that hoodie. But our next billionaire is so committed to vanishing that you can barely find a single photograph of the man at all. Number 4. Mark Leonard. Here's a flex you've never heard before. Mark Leonard, the founder of a multi-billion-dollar software empire, pays himself a salary of exactly $0. Nothing. He has waived all executive compensation, letting his entire fortune grow purely through the shares he owns. And that's just the beginning of how strange and disciplined this man is. Leonard built Constellation Software starting in 1995 on a brilliantly boring idea. After 11 years in venture capital, where he grew to hate the short-term, strip-it-for-parts mentality, he decided to go hunting for tiny, unglamorous software companies, the kind that quietly run things like public transit scheduling or municipal water billing. Nobody pays attention to those businesses, but here's the genius. Once a city or a company builds its whole operation around one of these niche programs, switching to a competitor is a nightmare. So they just keep paying, year after year, forever. Boring software, bulletproof cash. He bought hundreds of these little companies and built a personal fortune of around $3 billion. And the backstory behind this software mastermind is genuinely bizarre in the best way. Before all the billions, Leonard worked an absolutely eclectic string of jobs. He was a mason, a bouncer, a military sapper, a wind energy researcher, and even a gravedigger. A gravedigger turned billionaire software investor. You cannot script that. Now here's the frugality that made him a legend among his own employees. For decades, Leonard flew exclusively economy class and stayed in cheap, budget hotels, and he paid for his own travel out of his own pocket. Why? Because he refused to, in his words, freeload on his shareholders, and because he wanted to set a frugal example for the thousands of employees who travel for his company. If the billionaire founder is back in row 34 in a budget motel, no junior executive can justify booking first class. His cheapness literally protects the company's profits. And he takes the invisibility even further. There are virtually no public photos of Mark Leonard, and he maintains an absolute ban on press interviews. He generates billions in cash while remaining a complete ghost. Next up, we have a man who refuses to take a chauffeur and won't even let anyone else wash his dishes. Number 3. Stephen Jarislowsky. Every single night, one of Canada's most respected billionaire money managers stands at his kitchen sink and washes his own dishes by hand. Not the housekeeper. Not a machine he barely notices. Him. Stephen Jarislowsky, worth around $1.5 billion, scrubbing his own plates after dinner because, well, why on earth would he pay someone to do something he can do himself? And his life story makes that humility hit even harder. Jarislowsky was born in Berlin in 1925 and escaped Nazi Germany in 1941. He studied engineering at Cornell, and during World War II, he actually served in U.S. Army counterintelligence as a Japanese-speaking spy. A spy. Then he got his Harvard MBA, and in 1955, he founded his investment firm with a starting capital of just $100. $100? Over 63 years of disciplined, low-risk value investing, he grew that into an empire, eventually selling the firm for $750 million when he was 93 years old. But no amount of success ever pulled him toward luxury, because he openly despises corporate excess and overpaid executives. He once summed up his entire philosophy in a quote I love. He said, and I'm paraphrasing closely here, that he and his wife have always lived like everybody else, not like rich people. No plane, no yacht. He drives his own car, has no chauffeur, and does the dishes himself every evening. That's a billionaire telling you plainly that the trappings of wealth are a waste of time. And he put his money where his mouth is in the most meaningful way. Instead of blowing his fortune on personal indulgence, Jaroslawski endowed 40 university research chairs across Canada, specifically to promote ethics, trust, and good leadership. He even wrote a book teaching ordinary people how to invest for themselves and avoid the bloated fees of the financial industry. The man spent his life fighting excess, in his own home and in the whole economy. Jaroslawski chose his frugality as a matter of pure principle. Our next man didn't get a choice. His frugality was burned into him by something far darker. Number 2. Alain Bouchard. To understand why Alain Bouchard runs one of the biggest retail empires on the planet and still obsesses over every wasted penny, you have to go back to the moment his childhood fell apart. Because Bouchard didn't choose frugality. Poverty chose it for him, and he never forgot the lesson. He grew up middle class in Quebec until his father's excavation business went bankrupt. Just like that, the family lost their home. They moved into a wooden mobile home out in the woods, and they survived on powdered milk and bologna. Sit with that for a second. A kid watching his family go from comfortable to scraping by overnight? That kind of fear doesn't leave you. It rewires you. And young Alain made himself a vow that he would build something so strong, so unbreakable, that he would never, ever fall back into that kind of poverty again. So at 19, he started at the absolute bottom, stocking shelves as a volunteer at his brother's milk store just to learn how retail actually worked. Then, in 1980, he co-founded a company with a single convenience store in Laval, Quebec. That one store became Alimentation Couche-Tard, and through relentless, disciplined acquisitions, including the giant Circle K chain, it ballooned into a global monster of over 14,000 locations, pushing his net worth to somewhere between $6 and $8 billion. And here's how that childhood trauma shows up today in the most fascinating way. Couche-Tard is famous for keeping its global headquarters deliberately small, plain, and totally free of the fancy executive suites you'd expect from a multinational that size. No marble lobbies, no ego architecture. And even as executive chairman, Bouchard regularly walks into his own convenience stores incognito, nobody recognizing him, just to check the shelves and quietly hunt for any sign of operational waste. The man who once survived on bologna now personally patrols the aisles, making sure not a dollar is wasted. His frugality isn't a quirk, it's armor against a memory. But don't mistake that discipline for coldness. When the pandemic hit, Bouchard funded a massive assistance program specifically to support his frontline store employees, the very people working the exact kind of job he started in. He never forgot what it felt like to be at the bottom, and he made sure to look after the people still standing there. Bouchard started with powdered milk and bologna, and that was almost a comfortable beginning compared to our final billionaire, who arrived in Canada with nothing but 15 cents to his name. Number 1. Prem Watsa. We finish with a man who has been called the richest, savviest guy you've never heard of. And that nickname is the whole point. Because Prem Watsa landed in Canada with exactly 8 rupees in his pocket, which works out to about 15 cents. 15 cents. And he turned that into one of the most powerful investment empires in the country while staying so quiet most people have genuinely never heard his name. Watsa was born in India and came to Ontario for his MBA, carrying almost nothing. To pay his way through school, he sold furnaces door to door in the freezing winters and air conditioners door to door in the summers. Think about the grind in that, knocking on strangers' doors in the Canadian cold, selling heat, just to fund an education. He then got into finance, fell in love with the value investing principles of the legendary Benjamin Graham, and in 1985, he took control of a small, nearly bankrupt insurance company and reorganized it into Fairfax Financial. He modeled the entire thing directly after Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, and the results were staggering. Today, Fairfax is a portfolio of insurance and long-term investments worth over $100 billion, and Watsa is personally worth somewhere around $1 billion. He's even credited with predicting some of the biggest market crashes in modern history, including the 2008 financial meltdown, before they happened. And yet, The man who came with 15 cents still acts almost exactly like he has 15 cents. For the first 15 years running Fairfax, he refused to talk to the press at all. No interviews, no spotlight, nothing, which is exactly how he earned that nickname. He runs his entire global empire out of a small, plain, unflashy office in Toronto with a tiny staff. No corporate palace, no marketing machine, no ego monuments. Just a quiet man compounding capital and giving generously, completely uninterested in proving his wealth to anybody. And that's the thread tying all 8 of these people together. Whether it was a payphone quarter, a bathroom haircut, a Walmart parking lot, or 15 cents in an immigrant's pocket, every one of them learned that money is most powerful when you refuse to let it change who you are. And those were 8 extremely rich Canadians who live like they're flat broke. Notice the pattern running through every single one? Almost all of them either grew up with nothing or trained themselves to think like they did, and instead of escaping that mindset once they got rich, they held onto it like their greatest asset. The fancy cars and the mega mansions were never the goal, the freedom and the discipline were. So here's my question for you. If you woke up a billionaire tomorrow, could you honestly still check a payphone for a quarter? Drop your answer in the comments, smash that like button if these stories surprised you, and subscribe to Global Status because we drop stories like this every single week.